And we're back for Beer, Dice, and Sick Minis. I think this is episode 5. That should be about right. Episode 5.
That's about right,
Yeah, that's about right. I'm joined today by Nate from Vendetta Games.
Well, hello, everybody.
And Ken.
Hey.
From, wherever.
That's right.
And, of course, my partner in crime, Jeremy.
Hello, all.
Who y'all have, heard from before.
Yeah. Nothing special.
He does things.
Nothing new, yeah.
McLean had a whole lot of school stuff going on, so he was going to have to be out for a good bit, or forever, or whenever. Who cares? And we kind of had a little bit of a hiatus because I had some work schedule changes and everything. And all that's kind of done and over with, so we're going to be back recording bi-weekly, hopefully on schedule and the way we should. And at least most of us will be here, I think, almost every episode, hopefully.
We'll give it our best shot.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if not, then I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to talk for 2 hours to my damn self. Anyway.
Basically add the mics and nothing's really that different.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Or I'll just sample y'all from previous shows and just have a little keyboard.
Cut it.
That's a great idea, Eric. Wow, you're so agreeable today. This is amazing.
Dick pickle.
Yeah. So anyway, for those just joining us, we're gonna have everybody who hasn't been on here a good bit give a little overview, which would be Nate and Ken mostly.
Yes.
Of who they are and what they do and why they like gaming. I don't know, whatever. Who wants to go first?
I'll do it.
Oh, okay.
Way to step up.
Yeah. Look at you trying to get cookies.
It's like I got all initiative and shit.
Right?
All right, so I am Nate. My official job title is Evil Overlord of Vendetta Games. It's on the paperwork. Look it up. And I got into gaming at a young age. I was impressionable, and Highlander was on TV, and that was it for me.
Patrick Lambert. Like that.
Hey. If we're just gonna talk nerd erections right here, right now, he did B movies very well. But yeah,
Yeah, I was wondering. I thought we were talking about how you got into gaming, not about how you got into truck stops.
That's right.
I mean, it's a segue. It's a gateway drug.
It's a gateway.
But anyway, so I got into comics, and lo and behold, my first introduction into miniature wargaming wasn't until much, much later, and it was actually my partner in crime, Paul.
Who's been on this show before?
It's true story. I've heard it. He actually inherited a Space Marine army from one of his cousins, and he knew that I was a painter. I painted portraits and things of that ilk, and he said, "Hey, Nate, you paint, right?" And I'm like, "You damn right I paint." And he handed me that to see what I could do, and 2 weeks later I had 4 Warhammer armies, because crack. And that's pretty much how I got my introduction into miniature wargaming.
That's similar to a lot of people's stories, but instead of 2 weeks having 4 armies, it's like 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm an
4 months
industrious
later,
little
you're
shit with my
snorting
money.
3D printer dust.
That's right.
Well, it turned out that I was actually pretty damn good at painting minis, so that ended up financing me opening a store with Paul, and we've been knocking it out for 4 years now, and I'm as deep as ever into this mess we call miniature wargaming.
I know.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and Ken, who knows absolutely nothing about gaming.
Not at all. I'm just here.
Yeah, I actually only invited him on the show because he looks like Ted Cruz.
That's right.
That's a hefty qualification.
I got stopped in a parking lot 2 weeks ago that said, "Hey, can I take a picture with you?" And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "No."
You should totally just for his PR, just be like, "Fuck you, fuck your baby, fuck your gas, fuck you." Vote for Ted Cruz.
Right for Ted Cruz.
That's an undeniable argument right there.
If I wear a jacket out in public, I always run into trouble. I really do.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. But anyway, so how did you get into?
Oh
gaming?
yeah, so it's interesting. We're going to talk about the fantasy skirmish game from GW a little bit later in the show today, and my first forte into tabletop gaming was actually I was in a D&D group. I was going to Titans in Gwinnett, if anybody knows what that is.
I know Titans.
Yeah, that
as
was, back when pterodactyls ruled the earth. But I went into Titans, and they had this very small game that was like spawned out of a dungeon magazine called Chaos Warbands. And that was like my first time that I started like going, I need to collect these guys and paint them and have a good time. And then I've been around the block a little bit. I've been gaming for a very long time, and really enjoy it and have a lot of fun with the hobby stuff as much as gaming and just having a good time with friends.
Little known story, and this is a fun one.
Oh boy.
I of course got into 40K back in, I believe it was about 86 or 87, and bought some of my first metal Space Marines from Titan with my
That's right.
saved allowance money and lawn mowing money, and got into painting and things like that. And over the years decided to play guitar and get into bands and doing music, and dropped off the face of the world with gaming. And then many years ago, I got a job as a security guard, and overnight had nothing to do. And so on my days off, I ended up putzing around the good old Mall of Georgia and ran into Ken there at the GW store.
Yep.
Where he used to be a manager. And bought a few Tau models, got into Tau, and got back into 40K. I think it was, 4th edition?
4th edition at the time, yeah. That's right.
And entered a painting contest.
It was a painting contest.
And I did win something. I won painting lessons.
Yeah, we had a good time that day.
Yeah.
We really did. Yeah.
And you'll never live it
And
down.
I'll never live it down. That's right.
Oh, also, so it can be said on the podcast, Repo wants to know where his Sally is.
Oh my God, poor Sally. She's disappeared forever.
Yeah, good times.
Yep. Inside joke. I never got a mini to Repo. The only mini Repo ever wanted
Was Sally. Yeah.
was Sally, and it discontinued by the time he ordered it.
Yep. It could not be found. And he's still, to this day, if I mention you, he's like, ask him where my damn Sally is. And everybody knows Jeremy. Nobody cares.
No, yeah. I can't even muster the will to give a shit. But I
He started gaming because of magic.
yeah. Well,
No, not really.
actually,
I know.
My first jump into gaming was way back in the day with Space Hulk. Like the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
edition of that. I wish I'd been
nice.
smart enough to hang on to that.
Right. Keep
but-
one.
But yeah, but no, and I loved it. But yeah, I just kind of got into hit high school and got into football and girls, and my gaming kind of stopped for a while and didn't pick it up till years later.
One of my favorite DMs always says, girls bad for gaming.
Yeah.
I don't agree, but whatever.
That's not so much true anymore.
I know.
That's not
It's
so much
amazing.
true.
Half my D&D group are female.
I know, and it's awesome. And honestly, I strongly support all the women in the world getting into gaming.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yes, because we are not neckbeards.
But we can all agree that girls were counterproductive to gaming back in our day. There weren't that many girls into gaming then.
Well, what happens is when you go through that, adolescent phase and you start recognizing girls, you start spending all of your time and energy on girls, and then you realize that I don't need to impress. I can just be myself, and girls will like me just fine that way, and then you can get back into gaming.
There you go.
The natural progression of things.
That's correct.
Sometimes it just takes a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes, Aunt Matilda flashing you from the balcony.
How is Matilda these days?
She's good. She says that you still owe her a shiny nickel.
It's true. Inflation being what it is, let's keyword inflation here. I'll up for a whole $1.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
She's gonna be over the moon.
Is that what they're calling it move these days?
Yes, that is what they're calling it. So anyway, going into some of our upcoming releases and things that we have all seen coming out. This past weekend was the Labor Day weekend or whatever, was the Nova Open in Northern Virginia. It's a big event. We made a huge deal about it last year because of the Nova Open Charitable Foundation and me winning a Warlord Titan for a whopping $25 worth of raffle tickets.
It was very nice. Yes.
Yeah, it's awesome and amazing, and I love it. And I really wanted to win the Warlord Titan this year because greedy bastard But I'm actually really happy kind of that I didn't, because I would almost feel bad.
Almost.
Sorry, not sorry
almost.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be one of those, I feel bad because I won 2 of these in a row. And no, I don't give a shit. Thanks for my...
Dry your tears on your Titans.
Right. No, actually I wouldn't, because I would ruin an amazing paint job by
True story.
Caleb Wissenbach of CK Studios.
That's right. Yeah.
And just to give a quick plug, CK Studios is going to be doing an airbrushing class at Gigabytes in Marietta on November 9th through 10th here in Atlanta. It is $250 sign up fee, but you can do a deposit and then pay the remainder prior to the event. And it is a entire weekend long. It's full Saturday, full Sunday, 16 hours of instruction on painting miniatures with an airbrush, and they literally go over everything. It's an airbrushing 101. It's all the basics, all the things you need to know. It's an amazing class, and just having seen like what their alumni have done, what they're going to teach you, and how good of a painter Caleb is, it is well worth it if you want to up your skills, learn new things, or if you already know stuff. Like I already know a good bit of stuff, but I don't know if it's the right stuff, so I'm going to go anyway.
Right.
And we currently have a few signups for that, and if y'all want to sign up, go for it. The only issue is that there is a little bit of a conflict with Warzone Atlanta, but nobody cares about Warzone Atlanta.
Hey,
I'm just kidding.
have you know Vendetta Games is a big sponsor of Warzone Atlanta?
I know. Which I guess, no. We're not going to get into that. That's Inception level stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, they did actually announce a lot of previews at the Nova Open. Some of them were the Sisters of Battle stuff that GW's coming out with,
Right.
which is magnifique.
Yes, good looking models.
Yeah, because
I really like the box. The box is a good set for somebody to just go,
Right.
hey, I'm going to pick this up and start doing Sisters. It's not bad. It doesn't include a flamer, I don't think. Or maybe the flamer's just too expensive. Is that what it is?
well, you don't get the full scale.
Yeah, the
flavor.
full scale flamer. That's what it is.
Just saying, like in my bits box, I have if I'm going for an exact number, a metric fuck ton of flamers just kind of sitting there. And I play salamanders, so I use a lot of flamers.
Right.
And they're just around. They multiply. They're everywhere. Having taken a look at the Sisters of Battle box, I am... I know I'm keeping the penis jokes to a minimum, but fully erect here. Fully erect. Yeah. I've been a huge fan of the Sisters since I got into Warhammer. Yeah. I own a full metal army of them, and damn it, I'm going to own a full plastic army of them too.
Right.
Yeah, I also have a full metal army, and actually, Sisters were in 4th edition. That was the second army I got into, was doing Sisters.
Sisters. Nice.
Because I was like, I think Ken was even like, have you seen Bolter Bitches? And I'm like, what? Nuns with guns? Nuns with guns?
That's right.
And I went, what is this Nuns with Guns? I'm interested. And next thing I knew, I was buying Sisters by the bucket load.
Right. No, it was, like I said, the box is well constructed. They did a good job with it.
Yeah.
And really thought out what they were going to put in there.
Right.
Nice.
And the sculpts are beautiful. And that's one of the things I do like about the new Games Workshop is that they are actually thinking about what they put in their shit.
Right.
Except for the Grandmaster Edition Adeptus Titanicus. I'm still ass sore about that. Anyway, they did put a good value in that box.
Right.
Dollar-wise, it was an amazing value. But it was not an actual maniple of Titans I was getting for my money, and that kind of pissed me off.
Right. You're a non-playable game almost. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Without buying other stuff.
You could put everything together and then literally go, oh, this is how the rules mechanics work.
Right.
Now I have to buy a shit ton of other stuff. But anyway, the new Raven Guard Duder, which has gotten a lot of My Chemical Romance jokes and memes.
It has.
He does have a bit of an emo haircut, but guess what? They also give you a beaky helmet.
They do.
And I think he's an incredible sculpt. I really enjoyed him.
So I actually have a few things to say about that. As a painter myself, like I love any time, especially lately, I get to play with a new model. And I was thinking today just over like some pros and cons of the new Shrike model. Cons, of course. I mean, people joke about the hair. I actually don't see it as that big of a
I needed
big of a con.
either.
I mean, I will put on some Depeche Mode and paint guy liner on him just for fun.
Well,
Yeah.
We're talking about models.
Yeah. The thing is, like, the hair to me would be an issue if it was on like a Blood Angel
Right.
or an Ultramarine, but it actually fits with the whole Raven Guard aesthetic.
It does.
What I really love about him, though, is like if you look at a lot of the other chapter masters, they all look like an old ball sack in the face. You're just like they're all like droopy and shit. And he's very young, and you can tell he was shunted into the position that he achieved
Yeah.
a little bit before his time by just how youthful he looks. What's more is they, of course, upgraded his armor. No longer jump pack.
Right.
He has the newer patterns of armor, and something that I've noticed is that they are breaking away from the rubric of using just the standard weapons that are around with some slight modifications. He actually
Right.
has a very unique and personalized weapon loadout.
Right. And that's awesome. Plus, he got the Primaris treatment too, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Which is one of my cons. Was now you've made a dude bigger to make him stealthier, but that's a
I mean, one of the
I
fun
generally
things
have-
about the Marines is that they're big and stealthy.
I agree. I actually fully do. It's not something that would keep me from ever buying the model because he is a gorgeous model.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna paint the shit out of that dude.
As somebody that's collected Raven Guard, painted full Raven Guard armies before, I'm glad that GW's like producing some great stuff for the Raven Guard because
Right.
it's been ignored for a long time, and it is one of the main chapters that's been in the fluff forever.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get into more of that maybe a
Yeah.
little bit later on about some of the stuff that they're doing now to kind of
That's right.
support that other aspect.
That's right.
And your own creativity with their game because they're really starting to pull that in. I got a huge nerd boner over that new Space Marine Codex too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I was going to say about the model itself is the base seems a little unwieldy to guys that are worried about base sizes and stuff like that. But for somebody that's just going to paint, just like you're saying, I mean, it's a beautiful base. It's a beautiful model. Why wouldn't you just paint it? And put it
Also
together?
very dynamic.
Right.
Yes.
Great, coming out of the mold of like static marine.
Right. And it's a great pose and everything. They've also announced Psychic Awakening, which is the new campaign. There's
Yeah.
a lot of speculation out there on the internet that it's going to be similar to the Endless Spells from Age of Sigmar.
Right.
Which I think they're probably going to throw stuff in there like that. They've said, no, it's not going to be Endless Spells directly. We're not going to give you plastic models for spells
Yeah.
to wander around the battlefield. But I think they're going to add in new dynamics for psychic powers. And I think with multiple factions that don't really have much, if anything, to do with the psychic phase, and one of the biggest player complaints right now is that there are multiple armies skip out of phases. Like the Tau don't have
Correct.
assault phase really. You can do it. And
I know that's a bad idea when I saw how bad that went for a Tau player who actually went into that against my guard.
Right.
And my guard ended
Now
up shredding him.
I've actually charged Tau into unit of Marines and beat the ever living shit out of them. But it's
That's Marines.
highly
I'm talking about
situational.
guard.
Highly situational. So for as far as like the psychic powers and whatnot go, and as also the spells and Age of Sigmar, I've often found that Age of Sigmar is a launch platform for playtesting rules that they want to put into 40k.
right.
And also as far as what they've said about not including endless spells or that not being directly what it is, well, Games Workshop has bullshitted me a number of times now, and
Yeah.
I've gotten savvy to their crap.
I'm only repeating what they have stated. I'm not repeating what my actual suppositions are.
No, they were going to hold you responsible, sir.
Shut
Yeah.
the fuck up. But yeah, it is supposed to actually be a full campaign.
That's what I read too. Is that it's a whole campaign, and that they expect not just the Astartes to be in this thing, but like every race.
Yeah,
So, like,
they've
it's
said that they are going to put out new rules and stuff for every faction.
every
like
faction,
21
which is great.
different
Yeah,
factions.
it's fantastic. They're supporting it that way.
Right.
Yeah, definitely so.
Because how long has it been since we've seen them really do that? Like, I mean, you're talking about within the course of a year, they're going to spread the love between all 21 factions.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Tall order.
Now,
You-
to see if they actually do it will be, a waiting game, but at the same time, like, it's exciting stuff.
Right. I think they'll be able to keep up with it. And then One of the last things I got super excited about is for Age of Sigmar, the Ossiarch Bone Reapers.
Oh, they look so sick, don't they?
yeah.
They do.
Literally, I'm like, okay, so you took the existing Necrons,
Right.
the Skeleton Kings, and the Necromongers from the Chronicles of Riddick, and you made the perfect love child of all three of those damn things.
Right. Yeah.
Which, of course, does twinge my little thing about GW and their don't steal our IP, but we're going to steal other people's IP. But anyway, that,
But what are you talking about, Eric?
I don't know anything about that so that the GW assassins don't kill me.
Is that a laser? Wait, no.
Why is there a triangular red dot pattern on your forehead? Oh, shit. They have a Yatya under their command.
No, I've been drooling over these models now for a while because in Age of Sigmar, I myself am a death player. I've stuck mostly to Night Haunts, but seeing now the Bone Reapers, they've pulled from a number of different historical, I guess, influences as far as their armor go.
Right, like Mumra.
Yeah, Mr. Fancy Spartan dude.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sorry that the big model, whatever. I guess he's supposed to be some kind of HQ or.
He's
Hopefully
in
that
the
means we'll
lore.
get,
He's
like,
actually the
Sisters of
greatest
Battle
general.
Chitara kind of thing going on.
He's the greatest general to have ever lived, and
Okay.
Nagash has fielded him as the Mortarch of this band. Strategically speaking, he is on another level of planning. Like,
I'm still if I get a Bone Reaper's army, I'm still going to paint that sumbitch just like Mumra.
no joke, do it.
Purple eyes and everything.
Oh yeah, Mumra the ever living man.
Yeah.
He will tear it up.
Yeah.
Now, I've actually heard them likened quite a bit to the Tomb Kings, but I really don't see as many of the influences in them. I see them more as like a bone version of the Stormcast almost, as a way
Right.
to meet that on the field.
Yeah.
They're a
That's
bit-
what I would say too. Looking at the old school Tomb King, the models that were out and things like that, they really didn't carry over at all. Like you said, I think the new models are, once again, just way more dynamic and really kind of show that they're thinking about the poses of everything, and they're
Right.
trying to make it so that my little gang isn't going to be the same as your little gang. And, I mean, it's very nice that they're doing that kind of thought process to the whole thing.
Oh yeah, I think it's awesome. And let's see, we also have some of the other stuff that is kind of new release stuff that I believe is most of us I think either out now or comes out within the next week. Is the Blackstone Fortress expansion Escalation.
That
Where
did
you-
look really cool.
Yeah, where you get some new duders. I haven't bought any of the Blackstone Fortress expansions yet because I played it once with Joe, and that was it. It was a lot of fun. It is a badass board game, and one day we'll have to actually play it on one of the game nights.
I'd enjoy that, definitely.
Yeah, it's really cool because have you ever played it?
I've played a little bit, but I've been bouncing around. They've had so many releases lately that it's a little hard to keep up. But I have enjoyed painting the hell out of the models. I even keep one of them, the little Flamer Priest dude, as one of my characters in the Wrath and Glory campaigns.
Nice.
Maximus Payne, Imperial Priest.
As well you should. But yeah, they did a really good job of everything they gave you with the game and how it works. You basically, run through it. You can run through kind of like one little scenario of it. And basically what you do is you set out the cards, you set everything up, and you flip the cards for like encounters. And some of the encounters don't require you to do a whole lot. And then some of them you actually set up the boards and you set out the cultist and set out your, player character miniatures basically. The cultists are driven by a dice-driven AI. It has the card, and you roll the dice. You see, okay, he's going to do this, or he's going to shoot, or whatever. One of the players that's not acting actually does the stuff for them. And then you go through and you find Archaeotech and all these other things. And at the end, you can basically shop and get upgrades. And then if you're done for the night at that point, they actually give you these neat little Ziploc pouches that you can put the character card and any upgrades they've purchased through the campaign in. And as you go through the campaign, you eventually do kind of the boss battles. And then once you've done so many of the boss battles, you can do the big boss battle. And once you've done that, then you can actually open up the sealed little packet they give you with your game that gives you some fancy, neat lore tidbits and things like that. So it's pretty cool, and then the expansions kind of add more to that.
Right.
And so that's a good one. Another one that's actually really awesome is they have re-released the Kill Team starter box.
Right.
And that does look really good. And
Yeah.
it seems to me like it's a great value. Like everything
Oh,
that's
yeah.
in it. I mean,
Well, the
you're-
original
I mean,
one was a stupid good value.
Oh yeah, like when it first hit shelves, it was immediately out of stock,
Yeah.
and it was so damn hard to get a hold of again.
Yeah.
I had people like practically offering me sexual favors to get them boxes of this stuff, and there was a damn fine amount of value in it. And there are certain boxes that Games Workshop will release that just have that content.
Yup. And so you get the new, the kind of industrial AdMech looking terrain with it. It is Tau and what was the other faction?
I thought it was Gene Stealer Cult and Marine.
Marine. I thought that's what the name
Yeah, I
was.
think it's Gene Stealer Cult and Marine faction. And then you got the mat. You've got the.
I think you're thinking of a
rule
new
book.
starter box.
It's got the lore book in it.
We'll find out here. Because like
Consult
I said,
the internet.
yeah, consult the internet. Because if I remember correctly, it had advanced team Star Pulse, and let's see, where the hell is it? Why is it not in their news?
It's eluding you.
It is eluding me. It's under the games. Let's see.
Welcome to the dead air time.
Yeah, nothing like dead air.
You know what? I bet it was the fucking Blood Ravens all over again, stealing shit all over the place.
Probably.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what they do. They're little magpies. They like to get their grubby hands on all our Archaeotech relics.
And if I also remember, I think they actually had the colored plastic of each of the factions was different. In that box, or am I thinking about? I was looking at a bunch of different starter
they
boxes
commonly do
recently.
that these
Yeah.
days.
The new Warhammer 40k Kill Team starter set has five Primera Space Marine Reavers and 10 Tau Empire Fire Warriors.
there you go.
Okay,
So it's Marines and Fire Warriors.
And Fire Warriors.
And the good old AdMech terrain and a board and all that stuff to play
Okay.
on. Which actually our regular game night started playing shit tons of Kill Team. And
we need to play some more Kill Team again here soon. I miss playing that game.
yeah, we do, because I do have the Elites book, so we can actually
get
do the
into that,
Elites. Yeah. And I've heard that it's a lot of fun with the Elites. Commanders wasn't so good, but Elites is really good.
He loves it when I just bring my 20 guard.
Actually, I think it's fun because
It
I'm
is.
like, here's a challenge to kill all these fucking dudes. As quick as
No, the
possible.
thing is, I found what's the most effective way to play them is actually considered as just like 4 or 5 models. Just treat them as little clumps.
Oh, little clumps
it's
of guys.
And just treat it like 4 or 5 models and
Right.
move them like that.
Guard have always been kind of an issue inside of Kill Team because of the ways that you can break some of their point loadouts. In the very beginning, it was just how much plasma you could put in was insane. But I had a little bit of a workaround with some of my cult stuff. Turns out when you're eating their face, they can't shoot those goddamn guns.
Nope.
Also, mining lasers, truly beautiful things.
Yo, yeah. So, doing that, we also had a bunch of new Warcry war bands released.
Tons of different boxes. Lots of support. And
kidding.
like I said, that's what got me into gaming in the first place was Chaos War Bands, which is very similar to what they're doing with Warcry. Just, a dinosaur age between the two.
Right.
As is GW's common thread.
Right.
And one of my favorite things, too, is unlike a lot of GW's normal practices, anything you have Age of Sigmar-wise, whatever faction you may play, you can spend $8, get the pack of cards to play
Yes.
them in Warcry.
That's right.
And only $8. I was like expecting those cards to be like $25, $30, $40, and they're $8 and it's everything. I bought the ones for Daughters of Cain, and they are nice cards. They are high quality. It's everything you would expect.
Yeah, I was like, I really enjoyed that they immediately put the app out there. They put the
Right.
cards out there. There was a lot of support for the game, like immediately.
Right. We just have to
Instead
play
of like, trickling it out over a 6-month or 8-month period. They were like, hey, if you really want to go out there and play this game, you've got all the stuff you need.
And like the models to it, again, they're getting that new age Games Workshop treatment. They're gorgeous.
Yeah, nice, nice looking stuff.
The unmade, I mean, even the ones that I don't really like the aesthetic of,
Right.
I can't complain about because they're beautiful models. The unmade are great. The Cypher Lords, I mean, even though I don't get too big into the weird headdresses on models, because I just think it's like I really want to do like an animated comic series of like rubric marines like walking through a shallow doorway and just like thunk out, you know,
Yeah.
like shit like that. But the Corvus Cabal and the Splintered Fang, those are all the, you know, some of the newer war bands that have been just released. And Corvus Cabal is probably my favorite because they're all, you know, bird skull dudes. They're just awesome looking. But yeah, it's all gorgeous models and everything else that you'd expect. And then, of course, their big announcement was Aeronautica Imperialis.
Yes.
I got to hear about that one today. I've been waiting on that now for years.
Which was originally released as a Forge World only game. And you
Yes,
had to
it
buy all
was.
the models from Forge World. And they were kind of stupid expensive for what you got at the time. And the game apparently was good, but didn't take off. I don't know how many of us watched it, but I watched the How to Play video.
I watched a couple of videos on it. It was. I figured it would be right up your alley because it's all about maneuvering and movement trick and all that.
I actually, I have my criticisms of it.
I do too. I mean, my biggest one is the elevation, which I think on paper you start hearing about, oh, you're actually going to get elevation in the game,
Right.
about what they're about. That sounds awesome, but it's not easily seen at a glance on the table. You literally have to check the base of the model to know
figure it out.
where it is. And to me, if I have
Slows
to
down.
stop down and look, forget slows down, that ruins immersion.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'm not actually looking at the battlefield as it is. I have to stop and figure out the battlefield as it is. And to me, it was adding a step that in the end was really unnecessary. And also, like you said, slows the game down and hurts immersion. And that was a real big turnoff for me in that game, was just the elevations on it. I mean, it was a cool idea in theory, and I get why they did it, but I just think it kind of hamstrung the game for me, and I'll probably never get into it.
Well, it's interesting. In the past, when they've done some weird mechanics like that, just what ends up happening, especially if you're playing with a similar group of people, everybody kind of agrees with like an upfront contract. Like, okay, let's look at the whole tabletop. Let's look at all the miniatures and go. Before we even, throw the first dice, let's just kind of agree upon a few things so that we can keep immersion up without like having to stop the game.
Yeah.
And you have to like build some
Right.
mechanics in, especially if you're playing with a regular set of 20, 30 people. You just build these mechanics in for yourself to like compensate for the
Yeah.
immersion problem.
Yeah,
I think
I'll
it's
throw the
awesome.
shit out
I
of
mean,
it.
it's not like they can't figure out a way with plastic. Why not have bases where you can adjust the height?
Where you can adjust the height.
Well,
yeah, right.
Just, it's higher
actually-
or lower. That would have been all. That would have just
Blood Red
dropped
Skies.
right into it.
Blood Red Skies, which is a game put out by Warlord Games, has a base that the plane can click back and click down. So it's angled down or angled back or level.
Oh, okay.
And that will dictate whether you are at a climb or a dive, and give you an idea of elevation.
See, yeah, but
And
once again,
it-
it
and
gives
it
you
is-
that at a
right.
glance look at the battlefield.
It is an extremely quick and good mechanic. And when watching the video, my problem is that if I'm watching a how to play video for a game and I start opening up a, textbook to read about things I need to be learning for, network engineering or whatever, instead of paying attention to the video of how to play, I'm done with the game at that point. I think the models are gorgeous.
Yeah.
I think that they've got a really good box set. I think that the people that want to play it, it's great. But the problem is, having played games like X-Wing, Armada, having gone over the Battlestar Galactica game,
Right.
which does the hex-based kind of almost hex-style type movement better. They kind of... It just feels like they had a really good idea, and they have some good solid mechanics here and there, but they missed the mark on just a couple things. that I would really like to see in the game. And if I play it with somebody and realize that, hey, gameplay versus video, this is cool. Okay, I'm glad you spent the money on it. Now maybe I will.
Maybe I will.
But I'm not going to spend the money to get the box right off the bat.
Yeah.
Let's clear the air, though. Is it the presenter in the how to play that threw you off, or is it?
No, because regardless of her, honestly, it had nothing to do with her, really, because, you could have had Duncan or Peachy in there, too.
Right. That's why I was asking.
And
It's
it
like
would have been pretty much the same.
Irregardless of who was presenting it.
Right.
It was
For me, I actually
it was the mechanics
I found
that
the
threw you off.
presentation to be entertaining. It was
Right.
just a lot of the mechanics. I was like, they were, to me, like I could see why all of them were really interesting to talk about, and they were all really interesting on paper. But while I was watching it, I was just, I'm not looking at a game that looks really that fun to me. Yeah, I'm just,
Which, you never know, because reading the rule book for Adeptus Titanicus, it sounds like you're reading a VCR programming manual.
It does.
And you're like, holy hell, this game cannot be fun. But then when you sit down and actually do the mechanics, you're like, holy shit, this is fast, this is quick, this is intuitive, this works, this is a really good game and really well thought out.
Right.
Well, I'm feeling this game is the exact opposite of that. I think it probably reads like, oh, this game's going to be awesome, and then you're going to get to it and just like, it's a popcorn fart, whatever.
I'm going to be the voice of dissent here and actually say that I'm excited to try it out.
Good, you let us know how wrong we are.
Yeah.
And I will, at volume.
Well, that's a good point too. Is I think that, like Eric was saying, is maybe we have to try it out to really know, right? And I think
I'll admit that I can't admit that I'm wrong.
My brain hurts so
as
much.
as I've matured as a gamer, I'm looking for a lot of flexibility in a game.
Right.
Where I can be a little bit creative, where I can be a lot of flexibility, so that the game is never the same every time I play. I don't want it to fall into a rhythm that is just the same rhythm every time. I want the music to be different and the lyrics to be different every time I sit down with the dice. And if I can, right? That's what we're looking for.
Oh, my not to be a negative Nancy here, but my final complaint about the game.
Thank you for giving us those really great points, but we're not done ragging on this yet.
is the same damn complaint I have with MALIFAUX. Fuck you for making unnecessarily complex, horribly little itty bitty fucking tiny ass models that I have to fucking glue exhaust pipes onto a fucking airplane. Just cast the damn thing in one fucking piece.
I'm with Eric on this one.
What are models where you get the entire model, except you have to glue his feet on?
Right.
What was the point?
Yeah.
Hey, don't mess with Sensei Yu or whatever the fuck his name is. He needed
Sensei can go fuck you.
He needed his feet to either side of him in that sprue. I don't know. But anyway, I'm just kind of like, okay, I really hope it's a good game. I really want it to be a good game. I want to play it. I want to try it out, and I want to be wrong. Because the models are gorgeous. What you get in the box is literally, it's again, they hit a home run with it. You get 2 playable faction fleets, or squads, whatever you want, wings, whatever you want to call them. A rule book, you get everything you need, the bases, all the fancy shit. There's not the classic old school GW of here we're going to give you half you need to play this game so you can spend more money. And I think that it has the potential to be something really amazing.
I also like to point out that the price point is like half of what you've come to expect from Games Workshop these days. And that might be a little $90. Stockholm of me right now. Because I'm just like seeing the price increase and increase and increase. And I'm just like, no. And then they give me something for the price that it used to be. And I'm like, you saint, Games Workshop.
Yeah, it is. The starter box is what, $90? If I remember correctly? Yeah. So it's good old $90 US. That's not Hawaiian money.
Pretty sure those two things are the same thing.
No, we don't believe in Hawaiian money around here. We don't take that foreign currency.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a gentleman at the shop go on about paying me cash for tattoo work, and I said, cool, that's great. I take all kinds of cash. I just don't take Hawaiian money. And then he started, man, I don't got nothing but American money in this here wallet, man. You think I got that foreign money in my wallet? I don't got no foreign money in my wallet. And I'm like, dude. Dude.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You would be surprised. But yeah, I think it. I like to look at the positive as much as I, when there is something negative,
Yeah.
I try to see all the positive stuff to it too,
Sure.
because you don't want to just negative the shit out of something. But yeah, we just negative the shit out of that.
Yeah, I was about to call bullshit on some of that.
But I mean, hey, I did say the models are gorgeous. The box is a great deal for those that want to play it. I think it'll be amazing, and that I very well could be very wrong in a lot of my opinions. And that makes me a bigger man than all of you.
Oh,
Now,
who's been looking in the shower again?
Kid has.
well, I'm interested to see if it does end up becoming a very fantastic game, if he will still be the bigger man and not just slam the shit out of it.
Oh no, if it ends up being a fantastic game, I will be buying the ever-loving fuck out of everything, and I will be up there going, let's play! Yeah.
I'm likely to crack one of those boxes just for me, because I've legitimately been waiting for this for some years now.
Yeah.
So I'm excited at least.
Cool. So yeah, I think with a lot of our GW new releases and stuff like that, I think we might want to take a little break, and then we'll come back, and we've got a little bit more on the new release schedule, because there is a lot coming out right around this time. Some of the weird gaming releases and Fantasy Flight gaming releases we haven't quite gotten to yet, and they've got some good stuff coming out too. So we're gonna take a break and come back to that. And we're back, and gonna be talking about some weird and MALIFAUX stuff. They have been releasing their M3E stuff as quick and as much as they can, being a small company. It unfortunately has led to a bit of frustration over the player base, because they want their toys, they want it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which you can't blame them necessarily for having that, but at the same time, be patient, guys. They are doing it. They are a small company. They're a really great company, and they're doing their best to get you your stuff. They are releasing, I believe, on the upcoming releases will be Von Stuck of the Rezzers.
Yep.
He's the new Rezzers master, and he's like I think he's supposed to be, I don't know much about his lore, but he's supposed to be like a teacher or professor or something that's gone the Rezzers end.
Was he was like who taught Seamus?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's supposed to basically be, because Nicodem got taken out by Lady J, so he's supposed to be kind of the replacement for her in a way, just to kind of give the Rezzers another master. Victoria's box and the Dreamer box are supposed to be coming up here.
Right.
Grown-up
shortly.
dreamer.
The grown-up dreamer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, the grown-up Dreamer coming in. I believe they have said September, but we may be seeing end of September, early October. Just to be all that. The Bayou, Ten Thunders, Rezzers, and Outcast faction books are going to be coming out.
Right.
Which unlike the rule book, which has your rules and a little bit of the background, the faction books actually have the specific backgrounds of the different models in the faction.
A lot more information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're pages of cards. They have announced actually 2 new things for the other side now. One is the Gatling Gunners for the Guild faction, because they're going to be releasing models for the Guild faction, and the Court of 2 has a bunch of spooky spirit guys. I can't.
Because
remember
there wasn't
the
a
names.
lot
Yeah,
for them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I can't remember the names right off the top of my head, because they just announced that today.
Yes, I got that one. I forget the name of that one model that I have of the Quarter 2, the
Yeah.
kabuki mask looking thing with the lantern.
Yeah, them and like Samantha Thrace, who's the guild commander, those are released as, and the guild and the Court of 2 are supposed to be kind of like just a thing to add into your already existing army. But they've kind of alluded to they're going to be releasing enough stuff to make them armies on their own.
On their own. Yeah. That's what
Yeah.
I saw. Yeah.
So that stuff looks really, really cool. Definitely check it out, and definitely get those pre-orders in and all that, because there's nothing like having things be way more successful than a company thought it would be.
That is the problem to have.
Right.
That ensures they'll keep making more.
Yes, and we definitely want Weird to keep making games because we like their stuff.
I've actually had quite a bit of fun with it. I'm probably at this table the most extremely new to MALIFAUX, which is surprising because its themes are right up my alley. But so far, my greatest experience has been with the painting of the models and the diversity and not having to sit there and batch paint the same shit over and over and over again. It has allowed me to take a dynamic approach to the hobby aspect of it. Getting in games, I have not actually been able to get in official games, more of some learner games, but that was with staff from Weird themselves.
Well, Matt Riddle is a henchman.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually work for Weird. His wife does. And Matt Carter, who is at our Henchman Hardcore tournament, works for Weird.
Yeah.
But Matt Riddle himself is just, he's a henchman. I say just a henchman. No, he's actually an incredible henchman because he does so much and is willing to drive all the way up to
I was
Dahlonega from Marietta.
Super impressed with their dedication.
Oh, yeah.
How much they bring to the table.
Oh, yeah.
I never felt more like somebody gave a damn about their own game as much as I did with them. They're all super easy to talk to, very casual, laid back.
Yeah, great group of guys.
Oh yeah, like I was highly impressed with them.
Yeah, I was super impressed that, just the demo day that we did a couple weeks before we did the Henchman Hardcore tournament. Matt Carter, who's actually one of the developers of the game, one of the rules writers.
Designers, yeah.
Yeah, he actually, came to the demo day. And that's just, we're just going to be teaching people games and playing games.
Right.
And he made it a deal to come out. And then, of course, he came out to be the ringer in the Henchman Hardcore tournament. And apparently would have cleaned up had he not been the ringer. I think, weren't you the only one who beat him?
Yeah, trounced him too. It was brutal.
Jeremy is so humble.
Hey, that was the only win I had. I came in there with this whole plan of like what I was going to do, and it took me like several. Which, looking back at it, I'm really glad that happened because you never learn more than you do from losing.
Right.
And I the idea I came in there with was not a good one. I thought I had this great idea. This is what I was going to run. This is going to be my strategy. And it took me 3 losses to realize all the moving parts that I wasn't moving correctly.
Right.
And and then I got up against him and I'm like, okay, well, I knew I was doing this, and this wrong. So now I'm going to do it this way, and this way. And I just obliterated. And it was like, okay, what I brought, this is how this was supposed to play.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious because I brought a handful of models that were kind of more my favorites and ones that I had used early on quite a bit but hadn't played in a while, and was just like, I'm do maybe okay. I'll probably get my ass kicked, and I ended up winning second place.
Oh, wow.
I think the funniest part for me of that is everyone saw my list and what I was bringing. They're like, wait, what are you doing? And because it was a really simple, weird little list, but it was the combination. They were some really brutal models, the way they worked together. And everyone acted like they were so afraid of it. And they're like, I don't know. People were like, oh, I can't beat this. And then I'd end up losing.
Right.
Yep. And so, that all that being said, we had a lot of fun. I believe our last episode we did a pretty intensive coverage of the Henchman Hardcore tournament, talking about it and everything, and had a lot of fun with it. And I'm looking forward to the next event we get to pull, which I'll have to talk to Matt, and we'll have to figure something else out to run up there pretty soon because I don't want that interest going away.
And it's such a great format to get into the game. I mean, it's...
Yeah, it is. And I mean, the game itself is still probably my absolute favorite, long play skirmish game.
Right.
Because there is so many moving parts, so much cool shit you can do with it. And I love, you just sit down, you paint 8 to 10 models, and boom, you got a crew. And, you can figure out how they all work, and each crew works and does different things. And it's really like, okay, I'm going to sit down and try and figure out how this works. And you're probably going to have to play 4 or 5 games with it to actually start getting comfortable with it.
I love the fact that, you don't just, I'm going to show up with my Tau army today or whatever. You show up with everything. And then you figure out your scenario. You figure out what you're going to be playing. You go, okay, I want to play this crew.
Right.
Yeah, this is going to work with this, so I'm going to use this.
So I've actually, being the new kid here as far as MALIFAUX goes, I always have to approach everything from the position of like a salesperson, having a store and whatnot. So what I find is like I'm having a lot of trouble like getting new people in because it is so different from your typical miniature war game. But at the same time, I find that is actually something that I love about it. It's just so damn different than a typical war game. I love the card dynamics over the dice because the dice have come up south on me too many times.
And I mean, the card dynamics can too, but the cool thing is you do have the hand that you can. Usually, you get at least one decent card in.
But there's so much more control to it.
Because you when playing all the games that have the dice can run hot or they can run cold on you, and you can have a game where you just get trounced or that you just run over somebody because the dice were very kind. But with the deck, there's only so much power in your deck. And if you hit it early or mid or late, that's where you get hit, or if you get it spread out. But you have to manage what you're getting when you're getting it, and keep that in mind as you're going through it. Because, I mean, if you play defensively early on while you're just your deck is being cold, you know that if you can hold out and be smart, you're going to have that power on later models if it comes up. And then you have to capitalize it when you finally get to it. But you're not going to just have a completely cold run.
Yeah.
Right. And you can, and I mean, honestly, it would be interesting to see if somebody did the statistics depending on, dice versus cards versus how it all works out as to whether it really does change a lot or whether the perception has changed because of my favorite aspect of the way they have done MALIFAUX is they have created a miniature game where both players are actively engaged and interacting at all levels at all times in the game.
Right.
And there's no other game I have played where you're not just like, all right, cool, yeah, do your thing. All right, okay, cool. All right, now let's do this. Okay. No, MALIFAUX is like, you're always like, okay, what's he doing now? Okay, what's that? Okay, what's that ability do? Okay, all right, so we're going to counter that, and we're going to have to do this to counter that, and we're going to have to, and it's like, that was my experience when I was running the Hobby League. And we got into the games, and I'd been playing a bunch of MALIFAUX, and we'd been figuring out how to play the M3E open beta. And I went in to play 40K, and I'm sitting there playing Adam against, Gene Stealer cults versus orcs, which are both generally armies that have a good bit of shit going on almost all the time.
All the time, yeah.
And I'm sitting here like, oh my god, I'm so fucking bored right now. I don't even want to play this game anymore. I'm so damn bored. And I'm like, this is, and I realized that was where something I'd never experienced was that level of just constant interaction.
Well, I've talked to you before. It's like when I'm difference between I'm playing Warhammer over MALIFAUX. And like I said, Warhammer's a great game and the lore is amazing. But I mean, I've got this squad of 10 models, and it just feels like math and dice. Where I've got one model in MALIFAUX, and it's an absolute tackle box of abilities.
Right.
And I can take it in so many different directions. It just was more dynamic to me to have all these little individual tackle boxes as opposed to 60 models on the table, and they are all just numbers to me. They've got so few abilities. Even the ones that do, it's like they have their one little trick, and they're just numbers.
Right. I mean, like I was saying before, as I've matured as a gamer, I want more flexibility in the game, not less.
Right.
And a lot more creativity so that I can come up with a creative solution in the game while it's happening. Like that rarely happens in a game, and it is happening in MALIFAUX.
We were talking about what I love about MALIFAUX is like you get your scenario, your schemes, you got your table set up, and then both of you say, well, I'm playing this master. You haven't even built your crew yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I've decided to play this master for that scenario. Oh, and he's playing that master. Well, I was thinking about these crew members. I'm going to switch to these crew members. There's just so much flexibility to the game.
If somebody picks a master that is, okay, this is a range attack heavy master with a lot of blast stuff in their crew, I'm going to now pick a crew that does not need to bubble up for their abilities because otherwise I'm going to be screwed.
Yeah. And not going for an aura crew. I mean,
Yeah. And you get those matchups where you go, okay, I need a crew where every model does this thing. And that's why it's kind of like pick a master, pick a crew, learn that, and then from that stay in that faction and start collecting the other masters and other crew and the versatile models so that you get that whole broad spectrum, because every faction has a master that does similar things, when it comes to your kind of like this master is a range blast master. This master is a melee beat stick. This master is a scheme runner. This master does this. This master is an obey master. They have to some varying degree masters that have all of those different things in them, depending on how strong they are based on their crew. and some masters, you like Zoraida is the beast of the obey masters basically, but all the other crews have stuff like that, and they've done a really good job of making everything feel kind of neat and thematic and working together and doing what it is. But we have gushed about MALIFAUX for many a podcast over these similar topics.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing that came up, it is something we haven't discussed that came up at the Henchman Hardcore tournament that we were talking about, is I think it'd be interesting possibly if they would put something on the crew boxes that designated or denoted the complexity of control. Like how skilled of a player or how much game knowledge and crew knowledge are you going to need to really function this crew? Like your Rasputina crew. Mm-hmm. I mean, from what I was hearing, like there are lots of new gamers get into her and then move on to someone really quickly because she is a very, very fun. Like with the way you play her and the way she's so board control and putting out her ice pillars. There's I think a higher level of game knowledge needed to use her correctly, where other crews that are more just jump up and smash mouth or I'm going to summon a bunch of models are a lot less players' knowledge and skill to function them properly.
I wouldn't. My experience, it hasn't been the same. I would say that every master I have played, I have had to think about, and while some masters I can think less about to do a couple things, but I still won't be effective with them, versus masters that you kind of have to really think about to be effective with. They're all kind of the same. Like Rasputina, when I first played her, I didn't have a lot of 50 mil or the 30 mil ice pillar markers. So when I first started playing her, I wasn't using the ice pillar ability because lack of markers and kind of lack of knowledge of how the game worked as we were just learning it. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then I kept playing her, and the idea is just don't give up. And then I realized, oh, everything she does is keyed off these ice pillars as I'm reading the cards for the 45th time. And I realized, hey, I got to actually use these ice pillars. So then I started using them, and I realized, oh, shit starts popping off, and she starts doing damage at this point. This is how you play her. Mm-hmm. And, and because you can have, different master and strategy and scheme pairings. If you get into strategies and schemes and somebody's not thinking about it, doesn't know their master well, they're trying to play a scheme master in a strategy like Reckoning, which is all, killing models for VP, right. And you're playing a schemer heavy crew like Colette, and
you're gonna have a hard time.
They're not going to kill many models. You're going to have a hard time, and if your opponent is playing Nekama, you're going to get just trounced because all Nekama does is beat the hell out of everything. The level of complexity and interaction between everything is relatively the same. You just kind of didn't know how to pick shit because you didn't know the game yet.
Yeah.
Or you didn't know your master yet. And then, and that's kind of that. It would be kind of nice if they maybe had an overview like, Colette's box maybe said, in it, hey, this master is generally better with schemey stuff and this and that. If you want to try and do certain things, maybe you should do this, or something on the box to kind of depict that. But at the same time, a new player who doesn't know what a strategy is isn't going to know that from the box.
That's true.
And if you just start labeling things as, oh, this is complex, people are going to be taken away from the number one reason they get into these games, which is rule of cool.
Yeah.
I want a cool model. I want some cool toys to play with. And
I want to have fun with friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the other thing that goes into this is maybe not so much that there's a complexity to it, but who are you playing with? And make sure that the people you're playing with are like, hey, let's have some fun with this.
Yeah.
Because the best games are where the two people are kind of mutually agreeing, hey, we're going to have some fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, it's like once I played the Leviticus crew a couple times, and I realized what those models can do. I'm like, I'm not playing this unless I'm pulling on my competitive pants.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless I'm bringing an attitude adjustment to somebody.
Right. Because I'm like, this crew literally shuts down and does so many different things, and it can make a new player really get the feel badsies because I'm like, oh yeah, you take damage. oh well, I'm gonna do this defensive tech. No, it doesn't work because it's irreducible.
Yeah.
Oh well, that just gets really frustrating.
No.
And even if I'm trying to downtone my playing, just the natural abilities of that crew are just like fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, I think it's just a matter of learning the game and doing things like that. And you just literally, MALIFAUX is one of those games, and I think you have to go into it with the attitude of, I'm going to learn this game, I'm going to learn how to play this game right, and I'm going to not stop playing it until I got this shit down.
Yeah.
Right.
And, which, I mean...
But it's worth the effort.
Right, it is. It's well worth the effort because you there's no other miniature game to me that has that level of... You can really tell a narrative. You can really go through the strategies and schemes, and you can see the crews and what they're trying to do, and you can picture this little street battle on this, forlorn steampunk city, and everything exploding around everybody, and and oh crap, it's like, and the way some of the schemes are made, okay, pass a message to the leader. Well, okay, if you can get your model within this area of the leader, and then if you can get one of the other guy's models,
Right.
your opponent's models, to kill their own leader, then you've won that scheme. You've gotten the 2 VP from that scheme. So you literally have to be like, oh shit, the crew itself sees the leader getting this note from this guy that's from their enemies, and they're going, oh, wait, what are we doing? Why are we following them? Let's turn on our boss. And again, a scheme you don't pick unless you have an obey.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's something you only learn by playing the game.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that being said, we can move on to some of our Fantasy Flight releases. Having gotten back into some of Legion and Armada and looking at X-Wing 2.0, which is all I've brought myself to be able to do with X-Wing at this moment is look at it. Because I just...
Yeah, I can see the appeal of X-Wing, but it definitely didn't hook me.
No,
Yeah, I don't really have any bad to say. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's cool that you can buy the ships and they're pre-painted and they're in the package and you can sit down and play it. The original 1.0 rules I wasn't a big fan of. I played it a good bit and just kind of was like, this is a system. And then, 2.0 is supposed to have streamlined and taken care of a lot of that and made it really cool. Haven't tried it yet. I need to.
Yeah.
But haven't. But Armada and Legion are both really good systems and a lot of fun. Specifically Armada.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like both of those.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2 new releases, though, you were talking about was the Shore Troopers.
Yeah,
was
the
one
Shore
of them?
Troopers have just come out. They're actually in the upcoming releases section on their website. They are coming out with the Clone Troopers and
Right.
and droids
Yep.
army.
Isn't it's
The
gonna be
droid army.
Grievous versus Obi-Wan?
Yes,
Yeah.
as a core box, which looks really, really cool. Because again, it's going to be like their other core box where
Right.
I don't remember what the price point is on it, but I think it's around the $90, $100 mark.
I think it's 100. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah. It's still kept usually around that range with a lot of the Fantasy Flight releases.
yeah,
Yep.
and that's going to get you 2 armies, all the stuff you need to play, and they are good about giving you all the stuff you need to play. I
Right.
don't know if it'll have. I think they said it'll have 3 core units in it this time.
Right.
Because the original starter box, which came out on its own, only had the 2 core
2.
units,
Right.
and you had to buy more later on, which was kind of But they also released, in the rule book, they had the stuff where, okay, here's how you can play with just this stuff,
Just this stuff. That's right.
and enjoy playing it while you're waiting on everything else to come out. And unfortunately, Fantasy Flight was a little slow with their releases on that, which I think is one of the things hampering MALIFAUX 3rd Edition. And that hampered Legion, because Legion was a really fun game. There just wasn't support for it.
Not a lot of support. Right.
Not right out the gate. Now there is. And it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Right. But at the beginning, you're right. It was a lot of you either get vanilla or chocolate, and that's it. I mean, there was not 31 flavors at all.
When it first hit my shelves, I was shocked by the fact that I looked away and looked back, and they were all gone. So I immediately scrambled for more stuff, and we got pretty heavy into the game, seeing what kind of player support it got, and then Fantasy Flight I love a lot of their stuff, but they do have a common problem with releasing not enough stuff on time. Of course, that's a lot of miniature wargame companies have that very same problem. But the scene for it dried up very quickly, which I thought was a bit of a tragedy, just because it was and is still a fairly decent game.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. It's kind of the same thing. I think a lot of their Star Wars properties are kind of becoming the unsung heroes. And I know X-Wing has a really strong tournament scene across the nation. And Armada actually has a good scene in certain
does.
metas.
Yeah.
Like Gigabytes has a real strong Armada player base, from what I understand.
That they do.
And new releases for them, they're coming out with the Nadiri Starhawk, which is the Rebel ship. And then they're coming out with a new Imperial Star Destroyer. I can't remember which one it is, but it's a new Imperial ship that's coming out. Let's see. I'll have to look that up real quick.
I was going to say, while you're looking that up, I was in Chicago probably about 3 months ago. I can't remember exactly, but the last time I was in Chicago, swung by a store, and there was a lot of people playing Armada. Like, it was big. And there's probably like 22 people playing in one little like mini event. I don't think it was a true like absolute tournament, but they were like playing in an event together and like switching players and stuff like that. So you're right. I think there's pockets all across probably that are really pushing like one aspect of the game or another.
Okay, yeah, it's the Chimera, the Imperial Chimera.
Okay.
And then the Nadiri Starhawk, and then there's a Rogue and Villains expansion pack for the squadrons.
Right, I saw that.
That have Rebel and Imperial stuff in it, and then a new campaign expansion, which is Rebellion in the Rim.
Right.
And I have the current campaign expansion box that's out. I just haven't looked at it yet.
But those releases also get back to that problem that they were having, is you like had to pick A or B. Now there's a lot more choices when you're playing Squadron and things like that. There's a lot of other options out there, so you don't have to do the same one over and over.
I'm going to be really interested to see, and I don't know if you've heard, if they're going to release, or if the rules are going to basically be done in a way that you could basically play Clone Troopers with, your Stormtroopers, or, your droids with your Stormtroopers and your Clone Troopers with your Rebellion forces.
Right. I'm not sure, but it's interesting that the idea of the mix and match might happen in the future. That's for sure.
I think it's a good idea, because I mean, one of the things that Jeremy has always had a criticism on with Legion is that in some of the Star Wars games is you basically have two factions.
Right.
Well, yeah, it's like that's my criticism with Star Wars outside of just the extended universe, is you just basically have the Rebels and the Empire.
Yeah,
you just have the vanilla good versus evil story, and you don't have a bigger, richer world with other factions and everything's going on.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the fault of Legion itself.
No.
That is the storyline doesn't allow for much diversity as far as factions go. They're very heavily focused on the involvement of Jedi in everything.
Yeah.
And not really broken down into the true drama of what could be going on in that galaxy.
Yeah. The reality is, it's a great story. I don't get the hate mail of like, you hate Star Wars, but I mean, the reality is, I think that the Star Wars universe and the lore and the story will do nothing but get better the further they get away from the Jedi and the Sith storyline.
There can be so much more there, and I know in the extended stories there is so much more.
That's
there.
right. And the novels and some of the other things.
Anytime you have a story that's going to involve a Jedi or a Sith, they're going to dominate your story.
Sure.
So, but if you can get away from that, I think it just adds in so much more storytelling.
And I think one of the other issues is that because Disney is controlling the IP and pulling the strings, and Disney has not released enough of the movies and the stories that they want that include these other factions, they're basically limiting Fantasy Flight and what they can do creatively.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I have to give Fantasy Flight huge props, because with that limitation of factions, I think now that they have gotten a lot of the stuff out for Armada, that they have new stuff out for that, I think that now that they have gotten stuff out for Legion, and the stuff I have seen for X-Wing, they have actually really been able to take those 2 factions in Legion and Armada, and then X-Wing has 3 factions because they do the rogues and villains. You have these factions, these other things in the game and in the universe that are there, and they're kind of touching on them as much as they can, but they have been able to release a lot of really unique units and unique play styles for these units just using these 2 factions.
Yeah.
Sure, and one other thing I was going to mention while we were on that tact of, it seems limiting in one way, but it's not in another, is,
Right.
As somebody that owned game stores before, and like you own a store now, I think that as a gaming community or store owner, you have a lot of possibilities to combine all 3 into an event where people that are into the storyline can work Armada into X-Wing into Legion, and it all be one.
Oh yeah, I could totally see a narrative play where all these are happening at the same time.
Stuff like that.
Paul and I were actually developing a campaign of that.
Yeah.
It just it takes an involvement from your player base that is very extreme.
Sure, it takes this involvement, but you get people playing the part that they want, and then the game doesn't become so limiting because you're allowing the player base to kind of go, hey, how do you want this to go down?
So I actually find that works really well as a team-based event. That way you can have games going on side by side.
Sure.
Especially with a narrative play, because then you've set up different generals or faction leaders as your players to deal with. Okay, you're the land theater, you're our squadron leader,
and
all
different
this.
events and different segments
Yeah,
could affect
almost
all
like a
3
league.
games.
Yeah. Do it in a league style play format with the campaign and all that. And you could have something that's really cool with all the 3 different games and bringing it in, and of course that generates sales, and anything that generates sales is good.
It's a true story.
Keeps communities up.
Yeah,
Well, not anything. There are actually certain things. Well, that's a different discussion, so I'll get off of that.
I mean, dirty capitalists here.
I mostly feel like as long as you can drive the community, you're doing a good job.
Right. Well, I mean, the idea is you drive the community, that drives your sales.
Yeah.
Because if you're driving the community and you're keeping them playing and keeping them involved, you're keeping them buying things. And that's what really matters. And I mean, not them buying things, but them being a community and working together and gaming together. And you foster that level of, we're all gamers, we all do things. Because there's really nothing more heartwarming than seeing, a buddy and another buddy at a store playing, and then the one buddy's like, oh yeah, I'll buy you that unit you really want,
I'm misting up right now from
I know.
nostalgia.
just thinking of it. I'll get you that squad.
No, I actually see that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
There have been times when I've gotten a little too involved in the running of the business and not into the gaming aspects, and I've had my customers rally and be like, all right, Nate, we just bought you from your own store one of these things, come play with us. And I'm just like, oh shit, feels
The feels, and that is kind of the way it goes. And I think honestly, Armada wise, and play style wise between the games, Legion and Armada and X-Wing all have a very kind of cool system. One of the things I like about Armada is you are very much involved in the process. It's kind of
Once
like
again,
MALIFAUX.
yeah,
It's
where
like a
you're
fleet
involved the
battle
whole
MALIFAUX.
time. Yeah.
Because you are in there the whole time. You're watching what your opponent's doing. You care what they're doing. When they're doing things, you're having to do things too. It's an incredibly good rule set when it comes to fleet battles, where it makes them complex enough to be cool and fun, and simple enough that you can get your friends into it easily without having to, well, you have to redirect your shields here and do this here, and this means that, and that means that, and if we consult this chart and do some algebra,
Well, it goes back to your point
these are my 6th edition flashbacks right now.
right?
It goes back to your point of, does it come down to just math? When you're playing Armada now, it's not just math.
No.
It's like,
I
how
don't-
does this tactic and scheme
I don't
play
feel
into
like I'm just looking
right.
at math and rolling dice at my opponent. There's decisions I'm making. It feels
Right.
dynamic. I can feel the story, rolling out.
Rolling
and
out.
at a glance,
Now-
I can look at it and I can see that, and it sparks the imagination.
He says that, but then the game that we played Sunday, okay, he ran his ships into me several times, causing
Almost
damage to
ran
both
my
of us.
own ships into each other.
Oh, I saw it. Dry land
Yeah.
is not a myth here. Like,
I mean, he literally was admiraling his fleet in the worst way possible.
Yeah.
And I was pretty sure he was Admiral Underpants at that point.
Yeah.
And you know what? That, like, literally because of the few impacts on the front of my Star Destroyer, and then he rolls these dice that's like,
Oh, yeah.
hit, critical, double hit. I'm like, you bastard. Like,
I did not win that game. The dice won the game for me.
Yeah.
My dice rolls were off fire.
and I had totally banked on basically, you know, him rolling kind of the standard amount of successes and everything,
Right.
and me still having this damage left on my Star Destroyer and it being this beefy thing. And so I had used all my defense tokens and kind of blown my defense tech kind of early
Right.
on to mitigate
Early.
some of the other damage. And then he rolls this handful of dice that's just all hits and crits, and I'm like, you son of a bitch. and just, you know,
Like,
and-
even my X-Wings were getting damage in.
Oh, right.
So
yeah.
like I was actually like I was watching over the beginning sections of that game, and Jeremy, you were like wanting to quit after that first little bit.
I was still learning the rules, and I didn't understand what was going
Yeah.
on. I thought what I had done, it was like, so I'm basically not going to get my turns for a couple of turns, because I thought the way I had done the orders, and it was like, then they re-explained the orders.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no, so I still get to do things.
Right.
Gotcha. I thought I was just like, oh, so I'm just out.
I'm done.
And Eric and I,
yeah.
I'm going to watch him play for
Eric
2
and I
turns.
That's fine.
We're
And then
basically
they
just
explained,
like-
oh, okay, well, I'm not done. I'm still
Yeah,
in the game.
that's
Yeah,
right.
let's do
That's
this.
right.
we were very much like, oh, hang in there, little buddy. And, like, I walk away to go deal with a customer, and I come back, and he's got like Eric's got like one ship on the field. I'm like, what
Yeah.
the fuck happened while I was gone?
somebody learn to play. But no, it was a really fun game regardless. But I mean, and then I played a game with John Ludlam Wednesday during at my game nights that I have on the house, and I did the starter learning game with him. And it was, we were playing because he has a lot of experience with Battlefleet Gothic and games like that. We had this amazing tactical game where, like, it was literally just who could outmaneuver who. And I mean, he was pulling his, because, the Rebel ships are faster and more maneuverable. So he's pulling around to the asset of my Star Destroyer and trying to, whittle me away from, the section where I have one shield, and he can get to the hull quick and easy. His weapons aren't as good or strong as mine. And he made a couple critical errors in the movement of his ship and how he wanted to move them, and the speeds he was using on his navigation wheel. And man, I was like, he literally pulled up and got one into a broadside, and he had that zero shield facing me, and I'm like, yep, it's gone. and then his Nebulon B frigate at the end was like, he'd moved and he's like, oh shit, and he realized what he'd done once he'd done the movement.
Right.
I'm like, oh yeah, you're right at my front arc, buddy. And my side arc has a beat on you too because of the way that everything was positioned. I'm like, so suck turbo lasers. And we literally mathed it out pretty much that there was no way he was going to survive it. And I mean, because I rolled the first thing and it had him down to literally 1 damage left on his Nebulon, and I'm like, yeah, if I fire my side lasers at you, you're gone.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh yeah. And I was like, well, do you want to play it out to make sure that's what happens? He's like, nah, dude, we're good. I need to
We
get home."
surrender.
Yeah. and so I'm like, cool, because that was pretty much the end of that. And that's what I like about that game, is that it does all that movement, the way you're moving things, you do need to think and pay attention. But at the same time, if you don't, I mean, you're still going to have fun with it, because
Yeah.
it's a fun, rolly dice, blow things up game.
Yep.
And that to me is what makes a really good quality game, is that whether you want to play it casually or hardcore, you're going to have fun.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I've always been impressed with how I'm used to some fairly complex games here, and there is, for the amount of complexity
Like
you can get out of
Solitaire?
it, there is a lot of simplicity to it.
Old maid. That's
Old
my
maid.
jam.
Oh yeah. No, you solitaire. You haven't seen me play Magic. But no, for such a simple rule set and a simple
Right.
dynamic to the game, you can evoke so much complexity from it.
Right, and that's I get the same feeling from Armada that I get from MALIFAUX, which is that same thing. Here is a level of simplicity. You actually read the MALIFAUX rules. There's not a lot of complexity to them. They're very much A lot of that rule book is just describing the interactions between the models and the table and how you're supposed to do like line of sight and some of the cover and concealment and things like that. And then how a turn breaks down into its different time segments and a little bit about the conditions. And that's really about it. And then everything else, the complexity comes into what are you going to do with this model at this point? How are you going to use these abilities and these things? And that's the same way Armada is. How are you going to use your defense tokens to mitigate this damage? How much of it do you want to mitigate before you have to just start taking some of it so that you can maybe withstand assaults later on and damage later on?
Some of the best games are the ones that have like the simplest rules, but then there's just a myriad of ways that you interact with those rules.
Right.
I mean, getting out of miniature wargaming, Concordia, it's a board game. I mean, the rule book is like one page folded.
Right.
I mean, but that is an extremely complex game when you get down to playing it.
Yep, I totally agree. Complex. Simple.
Simply complex.
Yeah.
Flamethrower. So on to one of the other aspects of miniature wargaming and stuff that we love to talk about is hobbying around.
I am erect. Sorry.
If you heard the thump, that was Nate.
True story. If you heard the thump again, I have no idea what that
The
was.
table's uneven.
Yeah. The Ken has brought a lot of his fancy little custom build Raven Guard dudes
I did.
for show and tell.
Yeah, for
And you
show and
can't
tell.
see them, bitches. It's radio.
That's right.
They're abominations of plastic and pewter.
Zhao's a master race is a hybrids.
That's right. No, I enjoy the hobby. I enjoy building the models, painting the models, and making them not the same as every other model. Like, I really care about going, you know what, this squad is not going to look exactly like that squad. And
We like to use the keyword characterful. I don't think it's an actual word.
Strategery.
Charcuterie. This guy here with my summer sausage.
I thought it was
yeah.
your summer sausage.
What? Anyway. But, you know, the hobbying is a lot of fun. You know, putting things together, building them, customizing, kit bashing, which is pretty much all you need to do anymore. Gone are the days of having to sculpt your own Space Marine arm.
yeah.
You would think that.
Green stuff.
But I mean, one of the biggest rules with the hobby aspect of it, because so many people are intimidated by it at the beginning, and I even know people that have been at it for a while and they're still intimidated by it somewhat. Just go do it.
Yeah.
I always, even though Eric has a funny story about me giving him a paint lesson for a prize, but
It was done in a very positive way.
it was done in a positive way. My thought is that if you're making the effort, that matters, right? Like, I'm always incredibly inspired to see somebody making the effort. That's more important than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still incredibly green at the painting, but what I would say to people is, I mean, don't be afraid to, like, just paint it. If you don't like it, strip it, do it again.
So I actually
I've
have-
got several models that I have stripped all the way back down and reprimered and repainted just because I wanted to learn.
True story. But I actually have something that I tell people if they are really and truly that intimidated by painting a model. I say go to the dollar store and pick up a goddamn bag of Army Men and just paint on those. Like that, when I first got my very first airbrush, that's what I did. And I realized very quickly there was nothing to be scared about. When it comes to like your Games Workshop models, as long as you follow the rule, and this is of course with any model, follow the rule of water your goddamn paints, then you are fine.
Thin 'em.
You are.
And don't use
perfectly
enamel.
fine. Yes, please, no enamel.
So I should get rid of all my Rust-Oleum
Yes.
and my bear.
I will punch you in the dick from across this table.
I actually that was one of the last things in my early hobby years was I had a bunch of the pewter Terminators, and one of the kids that I used to kind of play games with in the neighborhood was like, "Oh, can I paint some?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I handed him a model or two to paint, and he went and painted them with Tester's enamel.
Yeah.
And when I got them back, I was like, I am pretty much enraged at this moment, but I'm not because I didn't tell you not to do this. And because I didn't think about it. I thought you would have seen my paints and used similar, but the scary thing is those Terminator models were actually ruined because no matter how much, and I tried stripping them with brake cleaner. My father, I was like, how do you get this off? My dad was like, here's brake cleaner. If this don't get it off, nothing will.
Yeah.
And it didn't. It still had, you could still see gobs of the paint and like, the little lines and cracks and creases. And it just, and I tried primering them back over and you
lost all the detail.
Oh, it was stuff, like a good half to 75% of the detail was gone. And I was so pissed.
Yeah.
I actually have that problem a lot with people just getting into the game. Unfortunately, miniature war games do tend to command a hefty price tag. Even though I tell people, especially like Magic players and whatnot, you play some expensive games. I don't want to hear your bullshit. But and also, if you're spending that much on your army, don't screw it up in the end game. Don't skimp on your paints. Your paints are probably literally the most important thing that you can actually invest in. Because that is, it's a tool that you're using to really perform the hobby aspect of the game. And with mediocre tools, you get a mediocre result.
Sure.
Yep. And speaking of mediocre tools and mediocre results.
Always talking about me.
No. I was going to go right into contrast paints.
Oh,
I honestly, personally love contrast paints. The reason I love contrast paints is because I have an airbrush, I can zenithal shade with an airbrush, and I work 90 hours a week. So I can sit down and I can literally just slap paint on a model and have it look good enough that I'm not embarrassed to put it on the table and not give two shits and play it. Mm-hmm. Now, if I was going to enter a paint competition these days, I would probably not be using contrast paints. There may be some areas where I think they can be useful, and there are some kind of more advanced techniques using them that I want to try out that I've thought up while I've been painting them. Number one would be like, taking a model, say you have a cloak. It works really good with anything organic. Hair, cloak, fur, anything that has a lot of that texture to it, they work really well with. And you almost don't need traditional paints with that because of how well it works. You try to do something like a Space Marine with armor plating? Nope, doesn't work so well. You get a lot of coffee staining and things like that. And honestly, there are several videos out there where some of the guys painting have literally painted a model in contrast paints and painted a model with their airbrush and brush and have gotten a better result out of the airbrush and brush in the same amount of time it took them to do contrast.
Right. And for somebody that doesn't know, explain what contrast means, though.
Like as in the art term contrast, or as in contrast paint?
As in contrast paints, because they might not be aware of the product.
I could actually cover this for you if you'd like.
Sure.
All right. So the contrast paints, a lot of the terminology is really coming from the fact that you are working from a very, very light undertone most of the time if you're using them the Games Workshop official way.
White or gray.
Yeah.
Right.
Really light gray. And you're working down in color. You're actually staining the model. And that's pretty much what I've had to bring forth to all of my painters and whatnot is like many of us have been staining for years, and that's what a contrast paint is. It's a heavier pigment than you're getting with your washes. And the reason you need such a light undercoat is because they do have that heavy pigment. They are so very dark. But that is also the beauty of the contrast, the shift in hues that you get on the model afterwards. My experiences with the contrasts are like my experiences with any of the Games Workshop paints. If you don't use them how they're prescribed to be used, you usually get a good result.
Right.
And I'll say this, in the past, I've dipped a whole army. I don't know that anybody dips anymore, but it was the it was the early on idea about contrast paint, and I've done that before with an undead army, and it turned out fantastic.
I think I remember that army.
Yeah.
Actually.
I've seen
also
that with Necrons too.
Yeah. I've also done a weird challenge at one point because I was pretty good at painting, and I could paint a little faster than other people could paint, just because. You know, when you're at a store and you're a manager, like you're painting all the time. So, like, one of my challenges was, could I paint an army in a day? And so I bought a box of Ogre Kingdoms from Fantasy Warhammer, assembled them, primed them, and painted them all in one day by doing a dry brush technique. And so there's a lot of options out there when you're doing this hobby stuff, like with the contrast paints and stuff that you should experiment with. And what I did is I dry brushed the whole army, and what I did is I made them look like terracotta warriors and like jaded out all the weapons and made the models look like terracotta. And I was just like, so I painted one model fully, and then the rest of them were like terracotta warriors.
Honestly, I was actually talking with Rebecca about that, because that spawned, and I think that was also happened to be around the time that they had found some extra stuff in the vault, and it was the terracotta warriors were in the news and stuff.
Right.
And Ken had done that, and it literally spawned like 4 or 5 other people doing terracotta style armies based on what he was doing. And it was when you can do a technique that's like, hey, I'm just going to fuck around and do this, and it inspires a whole bunch of other people to do it. The same thing you're doing. There you go. You won.
And that's what I'm saying is I think that people just need to take the time to experiment with some things.
Right.
I took a weird challenge because somebody's like, no way can you paint an army in a day. And I mean, it was like, I guess it was like 22 models, and I fully painted like the leader, right? Like, because he was alive. The rest of them were terracottas, right? That was my fluff that went with it. But the idea is that every once in a while in the hobby, you just need to challenge yourself and like do something that's out of the box and try some technique like contrast paints. It's a good idea.
Yeah. Using an airbrush, I painted a Tau army, a 2,000 point Tau army in a week and a half.
That's awesome.
My personal best is an 80 model Tyranid army in 4 days.
Oh gosh.
God. Wow. I broke my airbrush. That was horrid.
Yeah.
But they looked fantastic.
Yeah, there you go.
Now, I mean, some of the things I have found that are really cool with using contrast paints. Number one, do like I prime with an airbrush, so I use the Style Nerez. That's kind of my favorite primer. I use the gray, and then I use Liquitex Titanium White Artist ink, and I just kind of zenithal shade with the white ink to bring the gray a little bit lighter, and then to bring it very white on the top highlights. And then I actually matte varnish it. I found that gloss or satin pushes the contrast paint too much into the recesses, and you get areas of white still stuck out on the highlights.
I see.
And so you have red, and then you have a stark white highlight like on a fold of cloth, and you're like, it's not supposed to be there. The other thing I have learned too is that if you actually use a little bit of thinner with your contrast paints, and airbrush thinner works just as good as the contrast medium.
Right.
Don't tell GW I said that. They'll assassinate me.
What's that red dot? No.
Right. What's that red dot again? If you use that airbrush thinner, just a dot per, or a drop per 2 or 3 drops of contrast paint, you can literally do things in the the traditional GW too thin coats,
right?
And you actually get a much better effect out of the contrast paints that way, and remove a lot of the coffee staining. However, it takes the same amount of time as traditionally painting your models with acrylic paint.
True, and you're taking the step of doing the white just so that your highlights are still there when you're doing the contrast, right?
Right.
And so you're paying attention to lighting and the tops of folds and stuff like that with the white. Okay.
The thing is, it's simply it's another technique.
Right.
I've known a ton of people with the airbrushes who they only ever do airbrushing these days because that's pretty much all that they'll ever try. But if you can combine the techniques of your brush work with your airbrush work with your contrast paints, it's just another thing to add to the process, and it only adds to the hobby.
Right. Everything you do adds a tool in the toolbox.
Yes.
That's right.
From honestly buying the best GW tool ever made, which is the mold line remover, and learning how to remove those mold lines and sprue hunks off of your models. Those tools in that toolbox, all the way to primers, what primers you use. I mean, I actually had a discussion with Derek. Ken knows Derek.
Yeah, I know Derek.
And Derek's been on the show a couple times.
Yeah.
He actually tried to find a primer with what's called a strong enough tooth, which means that it will actually suck up the whatever you're putting on it. he tried to find a primer that was strong enough to prime and then to use markers to paint an entire army just to say he did it.
Right.
Just to say, fuck it, I'm going to do it this way.
Yeah.
And and that's what I love about Derek is that he will always look at things very unconventionally, and he will fuck around with shit, and he will do things that will piss off the status quo just to do them.
Just to see if he can do them, yeah.
Yeah, just to see if it can be done, and if he can get a good result that people. And the idea was to go for a result where people would look at it and be like, "Wow, that's a really cool painted army. How'd you do it?" And him be like, "Fucking markers."
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And Derek's a good painter. He always has been. Amazing painter, but he's willing to try something new. That's part of the...
Right.
That's what makes an amazing painter.
Yeah.
I find too often that people fall into just doing like what Duncan does, or like just following one paradigm of painting. And when I first began painting miniatures, what my painting really achieved was that I would try things that other people would not. And I had not half the skill of some of these guys, but my models were more stark in comparison because I would try different things. I remember hand scaling tanks. Mm-hmm. I hate myself for it, but I did it. Right. And people would ooh and ah over them, and I'd win some little local competitions, but that was against like seasoned painters because they were following that same cut and dry technique that they learned over ages.
Yeah. The best painter I knew, and I met lots and lots of painters, but the best painter I knew that won over and over again. I mean, the guy was prolific in winning stuff. He always said, go higher than you think you should, right? Like, always bring out your highlights that one step further than you should. And it seems like a silly thing, but it really works.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you go around and you follow some of the painting tutorials and some of the guys out there that are putting out content for painting and that paint on Twitch and stuff, one of my favorites is Kenny Boucher.
Yeah.
Of Next Level Painting.
Yeah, he's very good.
Yeah, and he literally is like, turn it up to 11 and then dial it back down to 10.
Right.
And it's the same basic principle. Go higher than you think, and then when you're doing your finishing touches and stuff, it'll if you're doing the process the way it is, then it'll drop it back down to where it needs to be.
Right.
And it'll look spectacular. And I mean, his painting is honestly pretty damn amazing. He's right up there to me with probably my favorite painter that I like to look at his miniatures is Angel Heraldez. That guy is badass.
Yeah.
I mean, I pulled up some of his stuff on Google Images and before I joined his group on Facebook and became a little fan of his page. But I looked up some of his stuff on Google Images, and one of them I pulled up. I was like, that's an illustration. No, that's not an illustration. That's not an art piece. That's a miniature.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like it. It looks like it was something that was drawn in like Photoshop and done it with a computer. And no, that's a miniature he painted, and it's just badass.
The only other thing I would say during this hobby thing, just because I think this is an important step that nobody teaches, and I'd love to pass on wisdom to everyone, is wash your miniatures. I know that sounds crazy, but like I wash the miniatures on the sprue with warm soapy water. And not to like scrub them or anything like that, but there's enough gunk on them from the manufacturing process that if you just take the moment to wash your miniatures, give your little dudes a bath. If you do that, the primer, the paint, everything will go a lot better if
all my dudes
just
stinky.
take a wash.
Well, anything resin.
Yeah, I've always washed my resin.
Dude, I snagged an ultrasonic cleaner from work.
Right.
And of course, we use a 3-liter ultrasonic cleanser.
Yeah.
And it was nice because I dumped an entire what's one of the big Forge World towel ships that's all resin.
Yes.
The Manta?
Yeah. Not the Manta, not the gigantic one. The Tiger Shark or something like that.
Yeah, the Tiger Shark, I think. Yeah.
Anyway, that thing in not assembled, but I put all the pieces into my ultrasonic cleaner and just threw it in there, threw some soapy water in there, and ran it for 20 minutes, washed it off, brushed it off, just dried it off, and boom. And of course, you have to do that with resin. You don't want to not do that with resin because
I just tend to do it with all my, even the plastics, because there's a little bit of residual oil or whatever left on all of it, no matter what, because the manufacturing process is just that way.
I don't do it with my plastics. I'm a horrible person.
I understand.
It is actually a good practice to get into, even if you don't commonly do it.
It is. I won't argue with that. But, that's one step I don't have time for.
Nobody got time for that.
When I start winning Golden Demon, then I'll start watching.
Then you'll start worrying about it. Yeah.
Now, a lot of times I will. I don't always. But, the other thing, too, is one of the things I have done with some of my metal and resin miniatures, if I haven't really had time to wash them, is I get squeeze bottles and fill them with isopropyl.
Yep.
A little bit of isopropyl alcohol. Just hose it down and just dad dry it off, especially metal. I do that mostly with metal.
Right.
And it'll take that, a little bit of gunk and oil from the manufacturing process off of there.
Right. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
You don't want to do isopropyl with plastic necessarily because it can...
I don't think it'll damage them, but you never know. There's so many different plastics in the marketplace right now that you have.
I don't believe it'll actually damage Games Workshop plastics. They tend to be much denser, sturdier stuff. But if you're doing it to a Legion model, well, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get some soft plastic or PVC plastic in it.
Right. There's so many plastics on the market. Yeah. You just have to be careful. Test before you do.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think we'll probably call that an episode, won't we?
One in the can.
Yeah.
One in the can. Another one.
Absolutely.
The dump in the can.
No.
I shit myself.
Don't you judge me.
I like it. It's squishy.
It's all about the textures.
Oh, I feel a peanut.
It's like a little reward.
Yeah, like a little mini gourd. Anyway, that I think we've hit on a lot of cool stuff and had some great talking points and even thrown in a dick joke or two.
Not as many as I expected.
Yeah,
You meant to say hoped for.
Yeah. You gotta to really hold back the repertoire sometimes. Can't blow it all in one go.
Right.
Whoa.
And I mean, with
You realized he named it repertoire.
Yeah, I do. It's tattooed and everything.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Wow. I think sometimes, we have to have a little more serious of an episode where we, not quite as stupid.
I mean, what the shit just happened? This is my first episode, and I know me. How did this one get to be the serious
We're
one?
talking about this guy's feelings now, like we're supposed to care? I mean...
No. God. The day anyone cares about my feelings will probably be the day that I develop them.
Oh.
If we start to care, he's going to start talking about them, and...
I'm already tired.
I've got my keys on me, right?
Yeah, it was funny because one of the stores I ran back in the day, one of the employees I had, they said something or whatever, and I kind of looked a little downtrodden for a second, just kind of as a joke. And one of the other employees looks and goes, "Oh, I think you hurt his feelings." And they look and they go, "What are you talking about? He doesn't have any." And just walked off. Yeah, pretty much. That's how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sociopath. Anyway. So hopefully, we should be back in 2 weeks to do another fancy episode, yapping on about different things in the gaming world, and hopefully games we've been able to play. Like I said, between now and then we'll have a gaming night because I've had to adjust that, and I'd like to get in some MALIFAUX again because I think that'd be fun. Cause
I definitely need to get more games in as well.
Yep. And this Sunday upcoming, I don't think there's a whole lot going on, so I may be hanging out up at the Vendetta.
Yeah, we're going to be doing some 40K, and I'm really pushing to get Age of Sigmar really going because I feel like a lot of my 40K players always say, I'd really love to play fantasy, but the internet has told me this, and I'm like, you shut the fuck up, internet. So
I have a big ass Daughters of Cain army that I have not even primed yet.
that's a sad story.
I know, it's huge. It's a big army.
Now he's bragging.
I know. Gigantic.
Snake-like. It's got wings. Wait, what?
It does. Morathi has wings.
Oh my god. I want to paint
True story.
no, actual for real talk, I want to paint that model so bad.
Oh, me too. But I haven't yet because, if I don't play it, I don't paint it.
Yeah.
But and plus, honestly, I think I'm going to save it till after I do the airbrushing 101 class.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one to test
That
out
would
some
be
new
a good
techniques
one.
on.
Yeah.
Actually, after having attended ATC this year, I saw so many spectacular paint jobs that I've looked at my night haunts, and I'm like, I really want to try some new like flame techniques with the way that the models coil and curl. The wisps of the ghostliness to them. There's several new flame techniques that I want to try out just on those models. 'Cause there were some impressive showings at ATC this year.
You know, speaking of ghosty things, and we were just talking about contrast paints, just to go back before we kill this thing for good. I did the Jackdaw crew for Outcast recently in MALIFAUX, and most of his core crew members are, ghosts. And so I primed them actually almost entirely white. I didn't worry so much about the zenithal. And then I did the what's the Night Haunt Gloom, the green one.
Yeah.
That was the early test for contrast. I painted everything with the Night Haunt Gloom, let it dry, and then I took my contrast paints and I like thinned them like 3 drops of airbrush thinner to like 1 drop of contrast, and then it was really hard to control because it got so contrast can be hard to control in and of itself.
Yeah.
But it was really hard to control. But the idea was to get that like old school like Frighteners ghost look where everything's glowing green, but you can still see the washed out color of clothing and stuff on them. And I think it turned out okay. It didn't quite turn out exactly as I pictured it in my head, but it did good.
I did a similar sort of paint scheme, not to continue things even further, but to continue things even
He's
further.
just going to talk about how he's better than me.
Just an honest guy. But no, I did that with the glazes, and oh my god, it's such a tragedy that they're gone. I used to use the green glaze and the yellow in unison, sort of do a half and half mix of them, and slather it on just a white model. And I take the green and work it back into the cracks to give a deeper glow. But it gave it like this sickly sort of green fire look to it, and I really enjoyed that. And now I can't find Lamenter's Yellow anywhere. Somebody wants like $30 goddamn for a pot of it. So I guess I'm learning how to mix my own glazes pretty soon.
Yeah.
Moral of the story.
Also, oil washes. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But yeah, with that being said, I think this will conclude Beer Dice and Sick Minis, episode 5. You guys listening to us on iTunes or whatever podcast aggregator you enjoy, please go rate us and comment. I'm going to actually start reading your comments online or on the radio, so that, or podcast, whatever the fuck this is.
Reading it on the radio?
Yeah, on the radio.
Oh, that's impressive.
Podcast is technically radio. I do actually have a ham operator's license, and I can actually read it on the radio should I choose to. Nobody would know what the fuck I was talking about, but it'd be hilarious. Anyway, if you can, go ahead and drop your comments, drop your ratings on iTunes, do all that. I'd love to hear from you. Also, feel free to look up the Beer Dice and Sick Minis, or BD and SM, Facebook group.
Classy.
It's, the BD and SM Drunkards, because it's Beer, Dice, and Sick Minis. And we like whips and chains. What can I say? And then give us a join and apply for membership. Join the group. That group has a couple different specific purposes. I actually started it a long time ago, getting back into gaming. And the idea was to build a community, and I want the people that are on there to be able to talk about whatever they want, post the models they're working on. Also, if you're looking for games, or you want to invite some people over for a game night, and you just don't know a lot of gamers and want some new people to join you, I want it to be a space where you can go, hey, anybody wants to come over to my place and game, PM me, and they can vet their applicants from there and figure out who they want to let into their house or not, and people come over and game with each other. And the idea is to promote that strong gaming community where not only are we supporting all the local stores, but we're also supporting each other and also gaming with each other on a constant basis, which gives us a stronger sense of community and is basically a community building exercise. So feel free to go in there and get on there and get you some games in. Or even post like I post, hey, I'm going to be at Vendetta all day Sunday, or I'm going to be here, or I'm going to be there.
Always follow gamers to a second location.
Isn't that always supposed to be never?
Yeah.
I know what I said.
You know, every time I've followed gamers to a
stand
second
corrected.
location, I've ended up very drunk, wearing a mailman costume, and not knowing how I got there.
3 times that's happened, and you keep bringing it up.
That was you?
Yes, it was him.
Oh, God. Anyway, everybody have a good night, and join us on Facebook and leave comments and reviews and shit. And that's all of us. We're all out of here.
Bye.
Toodles. Penis.